Call the meeting to order. It's Evans Printing and Media Group, WCOW Radio, Magnum Radio, La Crosse Tribune, Sparta City Hall, and the Sparta Free Library. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there is not.
I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Presswood, a second from Mr. Hendricks to adopt the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item up, budget reduction menu presentation. Mr. Russ.
Thank you very much. First off, before we start the presentation, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. And I also want to thank our entire community for coming out to vote last night. We had a great voter turnout. And obviously, from the district's perspective, we hoped for a passage of the referendum. However, that did not happen. With that being said, I would like to ask all the entire Sparta learning community, staff, students, stakeholders, parents, to bond together as we now have a task to continue the mission and vision of the Sparta Area School District with the resources that we have. It will be difficult decisions, tough recommendations, and a lot of discussions and collaborations will continue. However, we firmly believe, and we ask the community, by being positive, supporting each other, and remembering we all are Spartans, that we can get through this together. Goals for tonight, we're going to review a list of potential budget reductions. This list is the same that was provided to the Board of Education, the board meeting in March. But I just want to make it very clear, this list is not exhaustive. So other ideas will be discussed, and this is an opportunity for the Board of Education to get some feedback to the administration. It's also an opportunity for all of our stakeholders, from families, students, community members, business owners, that they would give input to the Board of Education and administration. Tonight, we are not taking any action. So once again, no action will happen tonight. This is all informational and discussion during the first part of the meeting after the presentation. The board will not take any action sooner than Tuesday, the 12th. Once again, thank you all for coming tonight. And once again, by staying positive and supporting each other, we will do the best we can to provide the best opportunities for all of our kids. Thank you. And now, Ms. Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. Russ. Okay. So as a quick background, the district is projecting a $2.8 million budget shortfall for the next 2 years, due largely to the state's K-12 funding freeze, meaning we have no new revenue coming in. And that is being paired with rising costs due to inflation and the expiring of our current operating referendum of $750,000. So foreseeing this budget shortfall, the district had decided to address it with $700,000 worth of budget reductions and asking for that operating referendum of $2.1 million for 2 years. The preliminary results from last night, as Mr. Russ mentioned, are that the referendum did not pass. Therefore, the district will need to reduce the budget for going into next year, 22-23, by a total of at least $2.8 million. The district's administrative team has been reviewing potential budget reductions for a few months now. And we have done this in the same manner that we go through our budget process each year. We look at our major spending categories, which are technology, transportation, curriculum, maintaining our buildings and facilities, and salaries and benefits. Upon completing that review, the administrative team came up with an initial list of places that we would recommend the board look for considering some budget reductions. As Mr. Russ mentioned, this list is not exhaustive and not everything on the list would need to be selected. And there may be things that aren't on the list that could be selected. This list is in no particular order, so I will go through the items one by one. This first page, these items have already been taken care of through previous board motions. Those are to reduce the district's cost on employee health insurance, by $340,000, and that has already been approved. The second is to delay purchase of new textbooks for elementary students with a 1-year savings of $100,000 to $150,000. This has already been approved. On the next slide, these two items revolve around maintaining our buildings and facilities. We budget approximately $500,000 each year in our operating budget to maintain our facilities. We have an option that for the next 2 years, we could use Fund 46, which is our capital improvement trust fund, to pay for our annual maintenance of our buildings. This would produce a temporary savings of $400,000 each year. We also could decide to defer our maintenance on our buildings, meaning postpone it to have that one-time savings. The projects would then get delayed into the future. The next slide is regarding student technology. The high school student technology is Chromebooks, and they are all on the same rotation in grades 9 through 12. They are scheduled to be replaced this year and are at the end of their useful life. Typically, with student devices, we lease them for a 4-year period, meaning it's a recurring cost for 4 years. An option that we would like to present is that we could decide not to lease these devices, but instead buy them outright using some of our ESSER funding. The lease cost is approximately $100,000 each year. The next slide is also related to facilities costs and staffing as well, which is closing the Cataract School. This is not staffing employees, but rather positions that are attached to that school, the utilities that are attached to that school, the maintenance on the building, technology, which does not include the technology that would go with the students, and transportation. We also have the middle school athletics program. It would continue to operate. However, it would be funded out of not our operating budget, but instead our community service budget, meaning the tax levy would fully support that program. The next slide is to look at transportation. This would be going back to the Meadowview transfer. Currently, for the past couple of years, we have been able to eliminate that Meadowview transfer, which saves on ride times for our students. It keeps students of like ages together on the buses, along with other benefits. If we went back to the Meadowview transfer, we would be able to eliminate 2 to 3 school bus routes, which would be a recurring savings of just over $80,000. The next item would be in relation to salaries and benefits, and it's a benefit to eligible employees in our district that they receive $1,500 per year in their retirement account. We could suspend those contributions for the next 2 years. That's a savings of about $510,000 each year. And then the final items on our menu were to look at staffing, which Ms. Brigham will be going into further details on the following slides. The slides that Ms. Brigham will be discussing equal a recurring savings of approximately $800,000. And we will go into those in a little bit more detail. Another option is to ask any of our year-round employees who have a 260-day contract if they would like to voluntarily reduce their number of contract days, meaning they would take days without pay they would not report to work either. And with that.
So I'm going to talk about possible some choices that you can make on reducing staff positions. Of course, I can't see that far, so I'm sorry. So each year, we do, as administrative team, look at the number of positions that the district needs to ensure that projected enrollment in our classes. We look at our class sizes, what our students need for such as special education, our ESL, intervention, and other support needs. And that happens on a yearly basis. Next slide. So as we looked at our analysis of our enrollment, all of these positions are based on the best information that's available at this time due to our enrollment. Should the enrollment or the needs of our students change, we might come back and revisit the list. And I'm going to give a few more details on the next slides. So a core teacher at kindergarten, a reduced of 1 FTE, puts our preferred class size is 16 to 20 students in kindergarten. And with this reduction, we'll still have a average class size of 18 and a half, so 18 to 19 students per classroom. Reducing a core teacher at Herman, you see our preferred class size ranges for each of our grade levels. And at this time, the projection are all underneath or around that. So first grade, our projected students are 18 to 19. Second grade is 19 to 20. Third grade is 19 to 20. And fourth grade is 20 to 21, which is all in those ranges. The interventionist at Herman, this was a 1-year position paid through ESSER. So Herman will still have 4 intervention teachers and 4 educational assistants to provide intervention supports for our students. Core teachers at Meadowview. For 5th grade, we're looking at a reduction of 1 FTE. Our class range, preferred class range for 5th grade is 20 to 25 students per class. It is projected that we'll have an average class size at 5th grade, anywhere between 21 and 24 students. We also did increase that position last year due to COVID. We needed to keep our numbers lower for mitigation purposes. Core teachers at Meadowview, we're looking at a reduction of 3 FTEs for 7th and 8th grade. The preferred class size range for 7th and 8th grade is between 20 and 25 per core class. The projected class sizes right now with that reduction would still be 18 to 21. So the administration team is recommending possibly looking at reducing 3 FTE by discontinuing the EDGE program. And I have more details about the instructional model at the middle school and our EDGE program. So our middle school model is a pod system where we take a group of students and they rotate to the 3 or 4 teachers within that pod. That allows for stronger relationships between our teachers and students. Scheduling interventions can be more efficient because we take students from that pod for our intervention time. And it kind of eases that transition from having only 1 classroom teacher to then being having 3 to 4 before they get to high school and they just have many different core teachers. So the junior high model would be more like that high school model where they just go randomly to different core teachers throughout the day. So some facts about both the pod system at the Meadowview and our EDGE program. So the EDGE program is also a pod system and they have 3 amazing teachers that wrap their supports around their students and they actually loop with their students from 7th to 8th. So back in 1920, we started the pod system in 6th grade only. And they had the pod system a long time ago, but we brought it back. So they had 3 core teachers assigned to the same group of students, so 9 teachers total, 3 different pods. And when we made this change in 1920, the EDGE program we didn't offer 6th grade to EDGE, and EDGE only moved to 7th and 8th grade. Prior to that, EDGE was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. In 2021, we moved to that pod system in the 7th and 8th grade. So we had the pod system for 6th, 7th, and 8th. It was had the same benefits as 6th grade that we talked about. Due to COVID over the past 2 years, we did continue to offer EDGE as a program, as well as our pod system for our 7th and 8th graders. And EDGE, again, does loop with their students, and that means they stay with their same 3 teachers for the 2 years. So to really implement that pod system well at the middle school, we did invest in additional core teachers at Meadowview over the past 2 years. And mainly that had to do with our enrollment and trying to implement that pod system, because that we just had that bubble. If you remember, we had more students in 7th and 8th. So we did add teachers to 7th and 8th grade. That larger class size is now moved up into the high school starting next year. So we will have lower class size projections for grades 7 and 8. So similarly, how the EDGE program is no longer offered at 6th grade, it may be time to reassess how to effectively meet the needs of all of our students in our traditional classrooms without the need of a special program. So that's something you can decide. Our LMC director at middle school, it was left vacant this year. So we had one LMC director that was managing both of those libraries with a lot of grace. And we had a meeting with the LMC director and the 2 secretaries. There is a plan that we can continue operating the 2 libraries with that one LMC director position. However, it is highly recommended that we keep both middle school LMC secretaries so we can maintain those libraries being open all day long for our students. The German teacher, this position is currently vacant for next year due to the teacher transferring to a different position in our district. So at this time, the high school does not need this position based on enrollment numbers. German and Spanish will still be offered at the high school level. However, this does decrease German at the middle school. So only Spanish would be offered at the middle school in 8th grade. We have a Secretary 1 position at Herman. This position focused primarily on making copies. We had the big copier over at Herman. We are changing that structure. So each of the 4 grade levels will have their own copiers. This position was also providing additional support increase due to the COVID pandemic. And then the educational assistants at the high school. There are currently 2 educational assistants at the high school that support study hall classes. Now the high school teacher prep time will be restructured for next year, providing availability for teachers to cover and supervise as a part of their contracted day. So that was a lot of discussion or a lot of different positions. So we just have them on one other slide for everyone to be able to understand all of the positions I just talked about. And I will take any questions, or Ms. Hauser can take any questions that the board may have at this time.
Are there any questions from board members?
Question. Josh,
Go ahead.
the assistant teachers, when I went to Cataract, I was quietly listening to the comments that were made, and some of the comments were made that as far as instruction purposes, a teacher is more important than an assistant that's in the classroom. When we talked about these possibilities of letting teachers go, was it taken into consideration the assistants would go first and then save the teachers? That's my question.
Thank you. We looked at our entire staffing plan, so all employee categories, and many of these positions are based on the student to teacher ratios, like Ms. Brigham described. Many of our educational assistants are through our title program, so they assist with math and reading, or our special education program per the IEP services. So that's why.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Mr. Leiden, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, so I'm wondering, could you go back to the slide that talks about the EDGE program again, please?
There's a multitude of slides, any particular one?
But yep, let's see here. So, well, I guess my question is we take a look at all the members that we're looking from a reduction standpoint. I've had a number of emails and phone calls from parents, staffing, so on and so forth, speaking about the importance of this program. And again, I don't know if there's a way for Ms. Brighamman, again, to explain, you know, what's the process with these children to make sure that they don't fall between the cracks if the EDGE program was to be eliminated? What would the process look like?
Well, we currently have 23 seventh graders that would be affected. So we would have some strategies. I would suggest they go into the same pod, maybe not the same core teacher, but within that same pod, we might have those 3 to 4 those 3 teachers have a little bit lower class sizes for that 8th grade. We would try to wrap our supports around our students, and we really want to wrap our supports around all of our students, but we might need to give a little more attention to those 23 that would become 8th graders next year.
Thank you, Ms. Brigman.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, this is a question for Leah. How does the CPI and step and lane equate into your presentation?
Yep. So the $2.8 million budget shortfall was taking this year's budget with some inflationary figures for next year. So there is some room for cost of living and step and lane movement. The board has not visited this item yet, but it was included in the original budget projections, a standard increase.
And so in the discussion, what number was discussed for the CPI?
So the board has not, administration and the board have not negotiated CPI yet for our certified staff. Current CPI is 4.7%. The way that works with our certified staff is that's applied to base pay, which is the starting teacher pay. The budget currently has a 4% increase in there for all staff. So that is just about enough to cover CPI and steps and lanes. That being said, that's just the original budget projection and the budget. So as we look at these budget reductions, we have to remember where we are in the budget cycle. So we're in the spring. We haven't visited all of our major budget decisions, such as salaries, yet. And our normal budget processes will work all through the summer to get the budget that we present in the fall. So some of these discussions haven't happened yet, but I do have budget placeholders.
Okay, well, I guess my question is, there must be a number that's kind of in the back of your mind. It's going to fit into this.
Yep.
What would that be?
It's around $500,000, 500,000
Okay.
for CPI and steps and lanes for all staff.
Thank you.
And again, that being said, CPI has not been approved yet by the board.
Right.
Yeah, got a question for you on the slide in reference to closure of cataract. Can you go back to that one? No, it's not that one. Okay, just for clarification on that, the savings, when we talk about transportation, again, is that in regards to the concerns that the cataract folks had made mention about the children being bused to Herman? Some of them had talked to me about getting up at, the younger students getting up early, like 6:30 or so. Transportation, are we talking about the buses there? Because if we're going to close that school down, you still have transportation costs to move those people from Cataract and that. So
Absolutely. Yep. So for transportation, I'm going to take your question in a few parts. So as far as any savings on busing, it would really only be for that midday route, which is our pre-K route. So the morning and afternoon routes, they would still need to happen. Those buses would just come into town versus stopping at the Cataract School. So the only savings is for the midday route for those pre-kindergarten students. And then your other question was regarding ride times. We did work with Southwest over the past 2 days to analyze some ride times, and Cataract is definitely outside of the city limits. We also have other communities in our district that are outside the city limits. So we ran some comparisons with down in the Leon area and things, and those ride times would be comparable south of the city and north of the city.
well, the question that I've got is that if we're talking busing and, we're talking about younger children, their bladders haven't been established, and it gets to be an embarrassing situation for our young students if they're going to Herman. Was that taken into consideration as far as reducing the time frame in this proposed option of closing the school by speeding that up?
So we're starting to look at the ride times, and the routes for next year have not been concluded yet. So with Southwest, we work hand in hand during this time to make sure all of our routes are within a reasonable time frame. So a couple years ago, we had set a goal of under an hour, and we were able to meet that on nearly all of our routes this year. And the ones that were over were just slightly over. We would hope to continue to maintain that in the future. As far as if it would require another route, I don't have that answer at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hauser, I had another question on Cataract, if that'd be okay, Mr. Leyden.
Right.
All right, I've had a number of questions from parents. Are we looking the number of students at Cataract School, that's around 68, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so the question that I've been hearing from parents, if we're looking at a per pupil revenue limit around $680,000 per year, the savings that we're talking about here, the $437,915, is that above and beyond? So are we saying we bring in $680,000 per year for the students of Cataract School, but we have expenses around 1.1 million? Or are we saying that we're saving on expenses the 437,915?
Excellent question. I've had that question also. So the 437 is the net savings. It's not the cost to educate. So many of the costs to educate those students in Cataract would follow the student to whatever school they went to. So for instance, the cost of their iPad, the cost of their textbooks and their licenses and things like that. So we pay the most per child for a Cataract student than we do the per student cost at our other elementary buildings in the district. And so that $10,000 per student, that revenue would come in regardless of which student it is or which school that student goes to. And that dollar goes further, if you will, at the other buildings because of some of the centralized costs being able to be spread out among more students. So the net savings is 437, not the cost.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions from board members? Is that it for the slides then, Mr. Russ?
So that is all we have to present.
Correct. Yep.
Statement to make. You know, with all the options of saving and circled around Cataract School. That is a culture that we promote with our young folks. I think that that cost savings is important, but I also think that the Cataract School students are just as important as the Sparta students. I classify them as being my kids as a board member. I think, you know, I won't be on the board after this month. However, I think that there's a lot more volunteer and service in that community that the board is not aware of. I know that Colin was there with me. Mr. Hendricks was with me there. I think that, as you said, it's not in cement yet, but I think we should seriously look at, the committee should seriously look at, you know, what is important. Our goal and objective for the school district is to train all our children. That's a state mandate. And not anybody's more special than the other. I would just leave it at that. I think that it's a very valuable tool in that community, and it should be looked at very seriously before cuts are made. Thank you.
All right, Chris, do you want to go to the next slide for me? I think it's the next one. So we have public input coming up. So we're going to follow the same rules we do for all public input. It's going to be 2 minutes or under. Please direct all comments to the board and not specific individuals within the district. The board will not comment on public input. We are only going to be listening here tonight. Please be respectful of others in the time allotted. I am going to try to give you like a little hand wave when you're nearing like 30 seconds left of your time. I know some folks look down, so I do get a little, give a little leeway in terms of public comment, in terms of time. So in terms of the audience, please be respectful of everyone's comment and all the stuff that goes with that. This is obviously going to be a very difficult topic to discuss and to go through. And I just want everyone to be cognizant of that fact that this is going to be a very difficult thing for everyone to go through. So individuals that have put in for public comment, I'm going to go in order received. So the first individual is Laura Cole.
I'm the current librarian who's taking over for the one that didn't show up last year here at Meadowview. So I've been doing the 2 jobs all year, and I just wanted to say that the administration has listened to what I have to say about the program, and keeping the extra secretary and keeping both libraries open is the minimum of what we need to do in order to provide a good library program here for our 5th graders through our 8th graders. So I wanted to thank them for listening to me. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me. I'll be in one of the libraries.
Ms. Cole.
Thank you.
Next individual, Julie Ender.
Cuts are coming to the Sparta Area School District staff. It's inevitable now, but they should not come at the expense of our children. Past practice to ask building principals for staffing recommendations such as teachers, educational assistants, et cetera, has always happened. But why not ask the staff what we need? These cuts should come from non-teaching positions and a building that has very little direct contact with students. I'm just going to come right out and say it, even though it could come back to, you know what? Do we really need all of the middle management positions we now have? Do we need all of the administrators that we have? I say no. What we do need is parental support. We need teachable numbers in the classroom. We need respect, not contempt from people who have never set foot in a classroom. And we need your support, board members. We need your support. What will teachers do if we don't get it? We'll do what we always do. We will do what's best for our children, our students, and we will go above and beyond to make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Next individual, Jordan Johnson. Oh, okay. Next individual, Joanne Hagan.
Thank you. As a fifth grade teacher here at Meadowview, I was concerned when I read about the closing of the library on the fifth, sixth grade side, just because of the variable curriculums that are needed. And I was concerned about the different levels of curriculum that we need. So I was happy tonight to see that possibly not having that go on, but I was more concerned about the programming that we have and how it could affect students. And I was worried about that when we have fifth graders reading at second and third grade levels, what that would look like if we had them all in one library. So that was where my concern was. And I just support the idea that we have our librarian who does such a wonderful job at programming. And we, in the last 5 years, have cut half of our library programs because she is working on both sides. So it has taken away some of the ability for students to have the programming to learn how to research and how to use the library and how the librarians support our technology on a daily basis. So thank you.
Thank you. Next individual, Cody Morrow.
I came here concerned about how budget cuts to teachers could lead to students who need more support in the district not getting that support that they need. We have a higher need for that here, and cutting teachers and increasing class sizes would just lead to more students not paying attention in class and more students failing. And when you go to high school, dropout will increase, and having it where students that need that help can no longer get that help and get that one-on-one attention that they need, or a small class size, will affect learning throughout the district.
Next individual, Marsha Ledman.
Thank you. I am a 62-year-old retired community member of Sparta, did not grow up here, don't have children in the district. But I think the schools in a community is what holds a community together, and the schools need to be supported. I don't know if this is feasible or not because I don't know the rules on it, but If there's any way to revisit a referendum that only failed by less than 40 votes, I would be very supportive and encourage the board to revisit that referendum. Surely we can possibly educate a few more people who understand that a school is a lifeblood of a community. We don't want to go down the road, as some districts close to us have, of voting against referendums and monies for the school until you reach a point where the money that you're asking for is so astronomical that it's never going to happen. These buildings need to be updated and kept up. The technology needs to be kept up. We need to retain staff that feel that the community supports them in what they're doing. And I want to also thank the staff, the board, district administrators, community volunteers, everybody that does the best they can to work with the students in our district. With that being said, I think that the cuts that we're going to go through are going to be very painful for people. They're going to have to accept that they're going to be painful. In that regard, I would also support the closing of Cataract School. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last individual for public comment. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Oh, I will second.
We have a motion from Mr. Hendricks, a second from Mr. Schulze to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.